It's often said in Formula 1 that if you're not moving forwards, you're going backwards. And every season the sport becomes a development arms race with teams rushing to fit new parts that they hope will improve the car they first unveiled in February. Usually the upgrades work with them having gone through hundreds of hours of testing before being fitted to the car. But this year, Ferrari are finding that nothing they do is working. They're fourth in the Constructors, already 187 points off leaders Red Bull, and more likely to head down than they are up. So what on earth has happened to Ferrari, and what comes next? Ferrari head into 2023 hoping for change. 2022 was a rough year for Ferrari. While they managed to win their first race since 2019, they soon became a laughingstock as a loss of performance mixed with some terrible strategy calls had everyone wondering how Ferrari would embarrass themselves next. Having once looked in a title fight, Ferrari just barely held on to P2 from Mercedes, and as is often the case with the sport's oldest team, heads began to roll. Team principal Mattia Binotto stepped down, and their strategy director Iñaki Rueda was replaced by Rabin Jain. 2023 then signalled a sort of new dawn for the team. In Binotto's place came the experienced Fred Vasseur, and early pre-season talk was that 2023's car, the SF23, was looking quick. Well, it doesn't take long for anyone in Formula 1 to be humbled. And when they got to the track in Bahrain for pre-season testing and saw the numbers that not just Red Bull but also Aston Martin were posting, Ferrari began to worry. They ended that first race with 12 points and Charles Leclerc being forced to retire, but things were only going to get worse. A series of underwhelming performances were to come, including the worst of them at Melbourne with a pointless finish, and there was already a scramble within the walls of Maranello to try and save their season. Ferrari bring upgrades. Unless you're a team at the top, it's highly unlikely that as soon as the first race is over, you'll be planning what to do next and how to improve your car. This season we have most notably seen it with Mercedes, who upon realizing their pace was down in Bahrain, set about designing and building an almost entirely new car which was unveiled in Monaco. While Ferrari's upgrades were not so dramatic, the SF23 in its current iteration looks very different to how it did when it first hit the track in Bahrain. Ferrari changed their floor to follow a similar aerodynamic direction as Red Bull. The Venturi tunnel was completely changed in order to increase the ground effect load, while a new rear suspension was rolled out to make the SF23 less sensitive to ride height changes. The Scuderia also introduced RB19 style side pods at the Spanish Grand Prix, but all of this has somehow hurt and not helped their performance. In Spain, Leclerc dropped out in Q1 complaining of a mystery problem with his rear. After a futile effort to discover what exactly was wrong, Ferrari were forced to replace the entire rear end, condemning the Monegasque to a pit lane start. From there, it was a torturous afternoon for Leclerc, with the SF23 lacking any kind of pace to try and cut through the grid. He would finish 11th, his third pointless race of the season. Carlos Sainz did not fare much better. He qualified third but was soon eaten up by Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. His humiliation was complete when Sergio Perez, who started 11th, passed him for P4. Not only had Ferrari not improved with their upgrades, they had somehow taken a step backwards, and everyone was left scratching their heads. Team principal Vasseur said, "It's very difficult to understand and to fix it because it's not always the same problem. We are there in quali and we're not there in the race. We're inconsistent on the same car between compounds and sometimes between the same compounds. Perhaps we can steer a little bit of the development on the consistency," Vasseur said, "and have something a bit more easy to drive and so that we can steer a bit. It's the direction that we took the last couple of months or weeks, and I think that we're a bit more consistent than we were at one stage. The issue is more than on the chassis side. The issue is more from stint to stint, because if you had something like this, you could say that it's always there." He was not alone in his confusion with Leclerc, saying, with a rather exhausted look, they had no clue what was going on. The Ferrari man said, "I don't understand what we're doing wrong, but we're doing something wrong," he lamented. "We're struggling more than what I expected. Looking at our weekend, I struggle to think that it can get worse than that. The target is only to get better from here." But the million-dollar question now is, how do Ferrari fix it? What caused the problem? Now, to find a solution, first you must find the problem, and in Ferrari's case, there is a pretty obvious place to start: the tyres. Ever since the F175 was unveiled last year, Ferrari have had massive problems with its tyre degradation. This can be seen most clearly in their results in qualifying as opposed to the race itself. In 2022, Leclerc took pole on 9 times, which was 2 more than Max Verstappen, and yet he just won 3 races. It's a problem that's continued into 2023, with Leclerc so far having secured 1 pole but no victories and just 1 podium finish. It's clear that to improve, Ferrari must fix their tyre degradation issue, but judging by Leclerc's comments following the Spanish Grand Prix, it would appear they currently have no clue how to go about it. Leclerc said, "The first stint we had the hard, which we expected to be a good tyre, but for some reason it was so bad. Like no grip at all, especially from the front. The limitations were completely different to qualifying, so today we were more expecting this. Then for some reason, the second hard I just do exactly the same thing and it feels really good. So for some reason, we seem to never really get in the right window of the tyre, and when we do, it's a bit of a surprise to us. So there's a lot of work we need to do. I think where we really need to pull all our focus is to try and be more often at the peak of our tyres and know how to manage them better. 2 or 3 degrees makes a huge difference on balance, and this weekend we've been struggling, getting completely outside the window or in the window and happy with the car. So there'll be a lot of work on that. Now, it's not just tyres where Ferrari have issues, but also in reliability. After just 7 races in 2023, Ferrari have had 2 retirements, both for Leclerc. The problem doesn't stop there though, as Ferrari-powered customers have also had issues. Ahead of Australia, Haas and Alfa Romeo moved on to fresh parts, with both teams taking new ICEs for all 4 of their drivers. Added to that, Haas's Nico Hülkenberg broke down 2 corners after the checkered flag with an MG UK failure. Poor tyres and reliability issues are a deadly duo for any F1 team, but that's not just with the cars that Ferrari have issues. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz are both lacking confidence. Over the past 2 years, it feels as if Formula 1 was set up with the sole purpose of destroying Charles Leclerc's confidence. Losing out on a title, reliability issues, performance issues, and his own mistakes have left the 25-year-old looking as if he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. In terms of retirement, he's enduring his worst start to a season ever, and it's affecting his performance. In an effort to make the slow SF23 outperform, Leclerc has pushed too hard and too far, leading to crashes like his off in Miami. Looking at his expression and listening to his comments after any race show a driver out of confidence and woefully out of form. Leclerc is not the only Ferrari driver like this either. For while Carlos Sainz has been spared some of the embarrassment that his teammate has suffered, the Spaniard's season has been just as underwhelming. At his home race, he had no answer to both of the Mercedes cars, as well as Sergio Perez, who glided past him with no real fuss. So, Ferrari have a nightmare combination of an underperforming car and drivers bereft of confidence. But how do they fix it? What can Ferrari do to save their season? Well, truthfully, there is no answer to that question, and if there was, Ferrari would have done it by now, but there are some good places to start. If we ignore the drivers for a moment, the best place to work on is the car. Ferrari, by virtue of their P2 finish in last year's Constructors Championship, have less wind tunnel time than anyone but Red Bull, but that doesn't mean they can't do any work back at the factory. Worryingly for Ferrari at the moment, the data being gathered at Maranello is not corresponding to on track, so first thing is to solve that. With 7 races worth of information, Ferrari can now see what's working and what isn't and adjust their factory dials accordingly. The second thing to work on is obviously the tyres, for there is no point having all the speed in the world if you have to do twice as many pit stops as your rivals. Ferrari need to discover not only what makes their car so bad at tyre degradation, but also what makes Red Bull's RB19 so good. In a piece of convenient timing, Ferrari took part in Pirelli's tyre test this week, and while that's primarily used to get data about the new wheels, there's nothing stopping Ferrari from gathering more data about their own tyre deg. Reliability issues too can be solved, for while power unit suppliers are currently restricted in regards to performance upgrades to their engine, they're not restricted if it improves reliability. It sounds easy, but those 3 areas should be more than enough to solve Ferrari's issues, and as soon as they have a strong car, their drivers' confidence will come flooding back. The only question now is, do Ferrari have the staff to pull off such a comeback? Thanks for watching today's video. Let us know in the comments if you think Ferrari have what it takes to make a comeback, and make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a release here on the DRS Straight.